I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin.
Pretty good lineup for y'all tonight. In a little bit, we're going to be joined by our friend, comrade, the incredible rapper and artist, Napoleon, the legend. He'll be making his Left Reckoning debut to join us in celebrating episode 25. I can't express just how thrilled we are to be able to hit this milestone with all of y'all. We couldn't be doing it without the support and especially all of our patrons. We're going to be talking a little bit about Joe Biden and this infrastructure plan, the communist menace, what it's like to make art under the Biden administration, and much, much, much more. But before we get any further, I'd like to bring on my good friend and co-host, Matt Leck. How's it going, brother?
It's going well, David. It's going well. I'm, context is key. You hear that a lot.
Yeah.
This is one of the things we've learned from Sam Harris.
That's true.
That context is an important concept. And up front, you would have heard Joint Chiefs Chairman, I don't remember his first name, Milley. His last name's Milley. Makes me think of the Lil Wayne song. Say that he reads Mao, Marx, and Lenin. That caused Lenin to trend briefly on Twitter. Now, he was saying it, I would hasten to tell people in a way that's like, we're not afraid of anything. We're afraid to confront all ideas, right? Which is, kind of what the military, that's the posture they need to have. And I will also say some important context for that is Ken Klippenstein's reporting over at The Intercept about the Navy internal police test. So this is a test you have to pass in order to be Navy internal police. Now, I don't know much about the Navy internal police. Is it? I don't know if this is JAG or something like that. But whatever. But the question is this: anarchists, socialists, and neo-Nazis represent which terrorist ideological category?
Let me guess. The un-American political tendencies.
Well, the correct answer is political terrorists. So, and that's a question, and somebody leaked it to Ken Klippenstein.
Honestly, they're not reading their Lenin.
Yeah, go on.
Oh no, Lenin very much hated political terrorists. He thought that they were completely nightmarish for left political projects, especially because they were very individualistic, right? Which is not a very, not a big communist or socialist trait, right? Thinking about yourself as an individual. Yeah.
Also, one of the more interesting things in Nelson Mandela's autobiography, I mean, it's essential read and everybody should read, but is his just matter-of-fact discussion of why they didn't use terrorism as a tactic, right? Which is it tends to turn people against
Another group,
you.
Though, that the U.S. military considered to be a terrorist organization.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. Maybe because these are the tests that they're making people pass. But damn.
Medicare for all, equality, fair wages, what do these represent to you? Political terrorism and the end of the republic.
Yeah, and
please.
Another bit of context that, where context is key is, throughout the whole Bessemer, Alabama fight, Amazon was like, guys, why are you looking at us? We love the $15 minimum wage. Mm-hmm. Well, Stephen Greenhouse of the New York Times has a good tweet here. It was actually a Guardian article. But let me just share this with everybody. The Teamsters have a powerful argument why Amazon drivers should unionize. Teamster officials say Amazon drivers earn $16 an hour in Southern California, while unionized UPS drivers there earn $38 an hour with $29 more an hour in health and other benefits. Right? Like, I just want to read this. Ask why the Teamsters are taking on Amazon. Randy Corgan, the union's national Amazon director, told The Guardian, "It's a natural. Our union has represented this industry for more than 100 years. We represent hundreds of thousands of workers in this industry. Truth be told," Corrigan continued, "Amazon's impact on this industry is driving wages, working conditions, and safety and health conditions downward. You have a lot of UPS, FedEx, and U.S. Postal Service drivers doing the delivery portion of this job. These are good-paying middle-class jobs for middle-class families. Amazon's model is not good for working families. It's threatening middle-class jobs." Yeah, I mean, this is not, again, this is something organizers were saying at the time, but it's just really important to underline because that was their main pedal. They pedaled to that all the time. Like, just look, what's up? What do you want, Bernie? Pass a $15 minimum wage.
Well, and that's one of those things where it's a lesson, honestly, about political messaging. It's like there's all of our opponents right now are almost trying to make it seem like, oh, well, all these radical lefties out there, their favorite wage for workers is $15 an hour, right? Which it's not. In fact, we argued that workers not only should be paid much more than $15 an hour, that they should be entitled to all of the value that they create, right? And it's so funny to sit here and like have these amazing arguments for Amazon, who's paying the bare minimum, what we think should be. If you do anything less than this, you should be in trouble with the government because you're doing something illegal. They're trying to act like this is some big pat on the back. And it's great to see the union sort of pushing back and saying, like, not only are these not great wages, but they really are working to push down wages across warehouses in general.
Yeah, it is the spear point for just an attack on just a whole sector of middle-class jobs. And that's just in the delivery portion of it. Not to mention like just the marketplace itself, all the other monopoly concerns that Amazon has. And it's a menace. And shout out to the Teamsters for fighting it. Joe Biden, I think.
Well, let's talk about, union jobs here, man. I want to bring this. We're going to talk about infrastructure, everyone's favorite conversation. Just because, honestly, I haven't been able to talk to enough like normal people in the past week to see what their feel has been on it. But I think most people are starting to get the feeling, who follow politics casually, that there seems to be a kind of dirty deal going on. And I think they would absolutely be correct. I just want to flash back a little bit to remembering the conversations that we were having. And I remember, Matt, when we went to Chicago with Michael for our TMBS live show, it was the same week that Bernie had launched his Green New Deal. And I remember sitting and having beers before the show with Michael and talking about how excited we were about the possibility of this being implemented, because not only could we really do something material about the climate crisis, but we could be bold and broad in a way that could really reorganize and redefine American society. And I bring that up just because early in the Biden administration, you saw that kind of like typical neoliberal finger wagging, like pundit making that same argument, right? That Biden's plan is this kind of radical reshifting of American politics and American society, right? Because Biden has, I would say, and I think you would agree with me, Matt, like Biden has been very effective at releasing something that sounds big, not big enough by our standards, but something that sounds like, oh, at least he's moving in a certain direction, and then delivering something very different. Yeah,
ever since the Yemen stop to offensive actions, he's the press release president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. The press release president. And Adam Tooze has a really good piece, and this is from a few months ago, talking about Biden's climate change plan and how inadequate it was. Biden's COVID relief plan, and making the point that, Trump, in fact, was doing more for people than Biden was, over the course of two different, COVID relief bills under Trump. But the real hope and like the real thing is, if Biden wants to cement a a legacy as like a kind of radical reformer, somebody who might have not done the political style of the left, but somebody who was actually delivering on material goods, then it was going to come from this infrastructure plan, right? And they presented it in this way that it was going to tackle not only fixing the potholes and failing bridges across the country, but it was going to radically redefine what we consider to be infrastructure. It was going to provide education opportunities. It was going to provide help for, raising children, home care workers, all of these things, right? It took a very, very wide mandate to what infrastructure is. Well, now as we get closer to seeing what the actual Biden administration's plan is, we're seeing that it's, in many ways, is pretty similar to a typical run-of-the-mill Republican plan. We're still early in the, in the process as it sort of comes out, these plans come out publicly, right? So there's only so much that we can talk about, but we do have an agreement now from this, 10 senator group that has come out, and basically anything that was particularly radical has been completely culled back. And even by the own metrics that Biden and his friends were selling this plan to us a few months ago, it's completely failed. We're looking at something that there's a lot of numbers that are being thrown around, but effectively when it comes to new spending, somewhere in the neighborhood of only $570 billion in new spending, right? And that's, delayed. That's not a lump sum that's coming out, August 1st or something like that. This is a very slow plan. And when it comes to tackling climate change, it doesn't even register, not even. And like for people who are listening to this, who like might not consider themselves to be socialists or progressives or something like that, we're actually like, the point here is it's not just like, it's not radical enough by our standards, but by the standards that we're trying to hold the international community to, right? By saying you need to be spending this much of your budget to combating climate change and to greening your economy. It comes nowhere close. In fact, we're looking, and if you could pull up, I put in the chat, Matt, this piece, which is in the American Prospect. There's a piece called "On Infrastructure: A Bad Deal is Worse Than No Deal at All" by Alexander Salmon. I just wanted to pull up this little bit here. They're using numbers that they believe to be extremely generous to what they're including as green spending, right? So they're doing this just to be as fair as you could possibly imagine. Even at a generous $79 billion number, this means 14% of the infrastructure package is being dedicated to environmentally aligned projects with electric cars and grid modernization, though those are the least ambitious parts of the environmental program. No major expansion of public transit, no major renewable power generation programs. The other 86% of the package is largely going to expand fossil fuel heavy infrastructure, including highways, ports, oil and gas reliant energy systems, and more, right? This is, even by the standards that liberals put forward, an extremely underwhelming proposal. And we're not just trying to tie everything into an infrastructure plan here. We're making this point because infrastructure drives the way that you're individual and you need to get to work, or you need to get groceries, or you need to do all the things that we need to do to reproduce our lives, to live normal life, right? And we make decisions based on the public infrastructure that we have around us, right? Be it public transportation, buses, or for the vast majority of people in this country, getting on a public road and driving, right? These things matter when it comes to lowering our carbon footprint. What you have available to you is what you are going to do. And if you don't have any other choices, right, we're going to continue down this path of extreme carbon emissions to get ice cream, or to go see your mother, or to go to a football game, right? And these shouldn't be the consequences of modern life. There are lots of different ways that we can move people from place to place. But if you're not doing this kind of basic greening of our infrastructure, right, you are complicit and accelerating this devastation that is climate change, climate catastrophe, right? Like, I'm disappointed with the Biden plan in general. I was disappointed from it the moment that they put it forward. But to see this after all of this talk is inexcusable at this point. There is a wide mandate to really beef up production in this country. There's a lot of people looking for work. There's a lot of people looking for a change right now. Our entire economy and way of life has just been disrupted. This is a radical opportunity to do something different. And instead, we're going to get more and more of the same with an army of propagandists out there who are going to lie and try to make it seem like, oh, because we can present a price tag that might seem very high by, certain historical standards, that this is doing something about these problems. It's not. And I want to hear your thoughts on this, Matt, but I just also can't ignore the most, the hilarious political aspect of this, which is Biden doing what Biden and the Democrats have done since they've come back into majority power, is say, oh, we wanted to do all of this stuff. We really, really, really did. But we understood that by taking off all of the critical aspects of it and basically passing a Republican light plan here, we could do that now. And then next session or in a month, we're going to pass the big bill that's going to have all the things that we put on the cutting floor. I mean, do they think we're stupid when they do this?
Yeah, where the situation stands now politically is Pelosi came out and said, we're not going to pass this bipartisan thing if you don't pass our, what they're saying is $6 trillion bill, right? And that's what, first of all, Pelosi should be doing. But the actual outcome of that, I think, is uncertain, because what you could end up having is that just blows up the bipartisan deal, and then you also don't get the big one. And that said, like, at least, like, it's, let's make one thing clear, that just passing the bipartisan bill would be a negative 100%. It would not be positive. It should not be passed. Like, just the amount of selling off of roads, of privatization stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, that sort of stuff. David Dan covers this very well. Like, absolutely should, that's a red line. And so, like, if that gets passed, not only do you have to pass this $6 trillion Congressional Progressive Caucus one that Pelosi's saying, the reconciliation bill, basically, which I think Matt and Cinema maybe like hinted that now they're open to thinking about that or whatever. You have to pass that, but it has to include more to compensate for how much of a sell-off this thing is. And, like, just to go over some of the, well, actually, let's do this first. This is how they're paying for this centrist bill. This is from Jeff Stein. So it's confirming main pay-fors for the bill, $100 billion in net IRS enforcement. Now, I'm for giving the IRS more money to enforce taxes, as long as the trend where it stops going after, frankly, people in our bracket and and fucking actual people where you can make some money, which it has stopped doing because of lawyers. It needs to be, the IRS needs to be weaponized against rich people. That's not what's happening here, but at least it's something. But then you start getting even worse. $100 billion in public-private partnerships, which we talked about, are complete jokes.
You should remember that public-private partnerships is public sell-offs to private swindlers. I mean, this is for people to provide worse services at higher costs to all of us. This is not a solution.
And as David Dame pointed out, is something that liberals were upset about when Trump was fainting towards. I remember covering it when Trump was waiting for, and you're not going to see now. It's just Mark fucking Warner's bright idea, and it's right, like toll credits recouped in unemployment, unemployment insurance program integrity, which. Is, to me, remember that Felix Salmon had that article?
Yes.
Like, that's what that's about, right? Like, he was propagandizing for that.
So I think this point is really important to make in the general, like, how are we judging the Biden administration historically, right? Because, I mean, there were a lot of really irresponsible people on the left who were making these kind of like grand statements about Biden that this represents a definitive break with neoliberalism and with centrism in general. Just look at the size of the packages that they're putting forward. In this example, and we're going to talk about other examples of this later, right? They are using the, large stimulus bill by American standards, right? that Biden passed, and Congress passed. And they're using that now to fund all of this other stuff.
They're coasting on
right?
it.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
To say like, oh, they passed this $2 trillion, plan a few months ago, and then they also say like, oh yeah, and now look, here's $1.2 trillion in new spending, and they're just taking money from programs what should have been disseminated as much as possible in ways that affected Americans' bottom line. More goddamn checks. Because I'll also say this too. There is, as we sort of re-enter the economy, there's a lot of giddiness that everybody's ready to go, and I'm sure emotionally we all are. But when it comes to the status of most people, a lot of the economic indicators that we're getting right now are not reflective of the longevity of security that people have, right? Because people who received a windfall of cash, right, from these stimulus payments, right, are in a better position than they were, a year ago. But those are starting to dwindle. And honestly, is an even more critical point, in my opinion, for us to be getting the $2,000 checks that were promised to us at the beginning of 2021.
Yeah, and so like I would just say like the ask from progressives has to be, this is bad what they're doing, and so you need to give more of the so-called wish list of goodies that Jayapal was saying. So which is, and Bernie's talking about Medicare expansion. Absolutely, that's a must now. Let's see. Here's a few: strengthen the care economy, bold investments in affordable housing, dramatically lower drug prices, and public health expansion, bold investments in climate jobs, expanded communities, roadmap for citizenship includes. So like all that stuff has to be 100% in the bill. That comes if this is going to be at all anything but a swindle, I think.
And hire people to do the work that needs to be done in society. Because what it looks like we're getting from the Biden administration is, after all of this BS corporate propaganda about all these people don't want to work anymore. They don't want to show up to work because they're sitting high on the hog because we gave people some very, very meager unemployment benefits. We're already seeing the devastation here in Texas with Abbott's absolutely irresponsible decision, aligned with many, many other Republican governors across the country, to not accept federal funds for extension of unemployment benefits for people. We are at a moment right now where there are a lot of people looking for shifts in their life. And what we're seeing more from the Biden administration is this kind of timid response to right-wing and like super pro-capitalist criticisms of the administration when it comes to the frankly meager unemployment benefits that we have right now. We're more likely to see a complete walk back of all of the beneficial things of the COVID economy, right? Which were some direct payments, a strengthened, unemployment system. We're more likely to see a walk back from all of that than what they should be doing. Which is like, this is just free advice for damn liberals, right? This isn't radical socialists coming to change like the full dynamics of the economy or anything like that. This is saying, hey, let's hire as many people as possible to do the public works projects that need to be done, not just filling potholes, right? But aiding the elderly and the sick, rebuilding community centers that have been devastated after years and years and years of mismanagement under neoliberalism and isolation under COVID-19. Right? There's so much that can be done, and this could be such a positive and very economically viable solution. What we're looking like we're seeing is just more and more walking away from policies that were extremely damn popular in the first place. Sorry, just as a bow, because this really just sticks. You listen to Texas Democrats right now, and their big message right now is that the Republicans are so evil and terrible and blah, 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 which they are. It's the it's a death cult. We all can agree on that. But they refuse to reckon with their bleeding with like the Black community in Texas, or even in the Hispanic community in South Texas as well. And again, so no one gets the wrong picture. It's not that these communities flipped 100% to Trump or anything like that. We're talking, margins, but significant margins, right? And you know what we've been finding in a lot of the reporting from those communities has been, oh, Trump sent us a check and that really helped us out, right? Why are the Democrats not trying to lean into that as much as possible? It's like, oh, we actually are wanting to promise more, more stimulus, more things that affect your bottom line, more things that just will directly put money in your damn bank account, because we know that you need it. We know that you have debts and you have, worries about paying rent, things like that. Why not lean into that? But instead, we're getting all of this desire for bipartisanship.
Yeah, well,
right. That like what we really need to do is see like Joe Biden and Mitt Romney hold hands, right? And like that's going to solve the problems in this country. No, people need help, and they want to look for somebody who's going to provide it to them.
Yeah. Stay tuned for our section on the very old edition of the very short introduction to communism by Peter Singer for why they don't like it when people all of a sudden have extra money for an emergency. But anyway, we got to get to Napoleon the Legend.
Oh yeah.
And we will be back with that stuff in a little bit, folks. Patreon.com/leftreckoning. We'll do a fuller plug later, but see you in a little bit. All right, folks, welcome back. As always, David Griscom. With us, Napoleon the Legend. Now, people don't know Napoleon. He is a hip hop and Afrobeat artist, prolific, multilingual. I was thinking earlier, like David and I have occasionally thought about once we get Left Reckoning up to speed, doing a European tour. And if we had Napoleon on that tour, we would sell significantly more tickets, I think. Napoleon, how are you? I should say, join us from Berlin, so we appreciate staying up tonight.
For sure. Like I said, I'm above the space-time continuum as an artist, but when y'all do come to Europe, if I'm around, I'm down to go with y'all, you know?
Oh, that'd be great. That'd
There's
be fantastic.
a lot I want to see for sure.
Yeah.
Right. I'm doing good. You know, I'm blessed. I'm happy to be with y'all. It's been a while.
It's been a while. I know we were mentioning before we went on that Napoleon was with us at TMBS in studio, our last guest before the world ended. It's still a little bit surreal. You know, you get a little used to it. Things like that feel like they're years and years and years away, but it was just last year. So very grateful to have you hanging out with us on this new venture and keeping those, that community alive, because it really was, we were really steamrolling ahead at that point.
Yeah. Hey, congratulations to y'all, man. 25 episodes, man. The new venture, you know what I mean? I'm happy for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to point people towards episode 105, where Napoleon gave us a very concise history of the coup history of Comoros. People should go check that out. Great episode, all timer. I couldn't believe it was only in fall of 2019. Like you said, the space-time continuum is really getting stretched these days.
Right.
Well, let's talk. One thing you talked about in that interview was making art under President Donald Trump. How about making art under President Biden? Has there been any change to your approach, or isn't it? Is it? We're kind of behind the same eight balls as we have been.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. Like it's not a drastic change. I think that the COVID was a change in itself, where we were quarantined. Right. And for somebody like me, it just made me, just keep going extra hard. It actually opened a few artistically opportunities for me, because artists that wouldn't have reached out to me everybody started reaching out to me, and I got a Kenaton he's like one of the most prominent French rappers, pioneers, reached out to me because his tour got canceled. I started making music with him, and I did projects with a lot of people. But I mean, I think that Trump kind of was like a pivot, where since everybody got more politicized, and I think in the way I do my art and I talk about social commentary, I talk about what's going on, Biden's just a continuation, because the problems are still there. It's just a different set of issues, and it's a different lens, you know what I mean? And now it's about, instead of the usual going back to brunch, cliche that we use, it's like, okay, now we're not going to fall asleep on you, Biden. Like, it's like high beams on you, just like it was on Trump.
Right. That's very interesting that obviously, now that I think of the question, COVID clearly much bigger change, because I just think of like every artist is doing digital collaboration, and I'm seeing way more music on like Twitch, for instance, like that, like Instagram Live is big. Like, you talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's even me, like the shows, that there was no more shows, right? And I did a few like internet live shows and stuff. They're not the same, obviously, but I just got to the point. Well, first you see my hair, because no barber, so we're survivors. So I had to.
I remember on Instagram you really struggling with that.
I know people were going off on me because it was weird. I just shaved it. My head was all white and chalky, and I took the picture like that, and I grew a beard. But I started like being more creative. Like, I would write verses. I try to write like a verse every week and rap it on my phone and put it up on a thing, just to stay connected with people. And it actually went good, because like everybody didn't have anything else to do but to be on the phone and watch things. So it's like, it was about quote unquote content at that point. You know what I'm saying? But I think it created more collaborations between artists because of the internet and technology. And Yeah, I mean, like we had to fight that isolation, you know what I mean? We had to find ways to stay creative, stay connected, and hope that, when things open back up, that we could hit the ground running. I think that was more so my mind state and a lot of artists' mind state that I knew about. And I think everybody reevaluated a lot of things too, because people had more time. When you're out there working all the time, when you're out there doing everything, like without talking about the negatives from COVID, I lost some people with COVID, a lot of bad stuff, even mentally, like some people I know committed suicide. There's a lot of bad stuff. But on another point, I see a lot of people like make like good life decisions, changes, like, look, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. You know what I'm saying? Which it would have never happened. COVID had not hit. So you take the good with the bad.
Yeah, I mean, even for like TMBS, it was very much like, when's the next live show? It was just a constant, like, very next short-term things, and it didn't leave a whole lot of time for contemplation.
Well, I remember that y'all were supposed to go to Austin or something like that. Yeah. I remember that's like when Michael was walking me to the train station. That's what we were talking. I'm like, you sure this show's gonna happen? And he was like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? But in my head, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
No, I remember being very mad that night. And I was getting the feeling, it's like my whole family's driving from all over to see me in my hometown. Like,
man,
I was very selfish for like a whole week until I realized, like, holy shit, this is like a very dangerous and serious thing, coming our way.
Yeah,
I understand. Like, it's like something was yanked away from us in a way. You know what I mean? And it just flipped the world all over.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I think like how we emerge from this with all the patterns that have been set. Like with music, I just think maybe TikTok challenges were a thing before, but they seem to be like a huge driver of culture now, like to the point where they brought TikTokers to the NBA All-Star game. Like,
oh, wow.
I like that stuff. I mean, that is just fascinating to me. Like, I feel like we're in a completely different, like, I remember just going to shows and like that was almost why I moved to New York. I always would drive from like Fargo to Minneapolis just to see concerts. And I gotta say, I'm like itching to get back into, I saw a stand-up show a few weeks ago. Like I'm really itching to get back into it, but I'm curious what like patterns have been or habits have been set.
Well, I think that when shows start again, for real, like end of this year, beginning of next year, I think there's gonna be a huge boom where people are just gonna want to do it. From what I'm hearing, right? I'm not an insider in any type of way, but from what I'm hearing from people in the music business, they're really ready. Like, I'm talking about big business. I'm not talking about like artists that are like so struggling and like don't have things going are having a hard time and are gonna have a hard time. Artists that are in place and in position, they're like getting set to cake out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because people are gonna want to get tickets, people are gonna want to get out and do the shows because something that was restricted from them for a long time. Now, I feel bad for the artists that, you know what I'm saying, it's gonna be tough for some people, and some people, of course, they're gonna just benefit, you know what I'm saying?
Like the competition, like getting at venues and stuff.
Excuse me?
Like competition, like getting into venues and stuff.
Yeah, and the biggest fish are, they're gonna eat first, and they're gonna, they're gonna eat the most, man. It's like everything else. It's like there's no more middle. You know what I'm saying? It's like either you're like there or either you're like you don't exist. So it's good. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? I think I hustle hard. I've been blessed with a lot of great opportunities, and I kept super consistent. So I'm not really worried about myself. I'm already getting calls. I should start having shows probably like in September if everything goes right. So, and I think I'm gonna keep going from there. But I know a lot of other artists, they probably is gonna have a hard time maneuvering.
Did Europe do a better job of protecting venues than the States did?
Man, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, Europe is it's like it's a lot of different countries.
Right.
I know it was tough. You know what I mean? I know it was tough for the arts because the arts were like kind of the last thing. But like, let's say like France, which I probably know the most about because I deal with a lot of artists from there. Like, the businesses were subsidized for the most part. They were being helped and they were being held up. So now when things open back up, we'll see what happens from there. But I don't know, man. I just know that it was kind of tough, but I think I'm guessing now. I think like booking agencies, like, you know, like Live Nation, like things like that. I think they probably took a big hit because, for example, shout out to my boy Kenneth from the group I Am. Their tour got canceled twice due to COVID, and it's a Live Nation tour, and it's a big tour. They take 50 people on the road with their team and everything like that. And it's tough for them, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it's a lot of people eating, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm sure like these big booking agencies had a hard time surviving, especially those that are American based, you know? Interesting.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Now that we let David cool off a little bit from his Joe Biden stuff, I want to kind of bring him back to that mindset a little bit. So at Draxtor on Twitter had a thread that pointed something out of Peter Singer's Marx, A Very Short Introduction. You guys may have seen these very short introductions. It's a common series. Now, I just want to point out this piece here. And
you know who Peter Singer is?
Was he like the? Is he like? Did he write animal rights pieces and stuff like that? Okay,
so he wrote like To Be a Bat. Yeah.
So like, I will just say about that, as I haven't engaged a whole lot with it, but I am very glad that the left that exists now is a little different than the left that like I grew up, like that was all like sort of siloed.
It's funny to have him be the one who you get to do the Marx book, right? Versus like, you know, David Harvey or hell, even like a Slavoj Žižek to be like, all right, let's get the guys talking about, you know, like animal perspectives to talk about Marxism. Yeah, it shows sort of where it was at that period of time.
Right. So I'm going to share this, David. This is the first time David's seen this, and it's going to really upset him, I think. Well, it's going to make him laugh, actually. This is from the conclusion. Many of Marx's other theories have been refuted by events. The theory that wages will always tend downwards to the subsistence level of the workers, the theory of the falling rate of profit, the theory that under capitalism, economic crises will become more and more severe, the theory that capitalism will force more and more people down into working class, and the theory that to force wages down, capitalism requires an, quote, industrial reserve army of paupers, people who are unemployed or irregularly employed or living near the subsistence level. Now, could you whiff? Like, that's like striking. That's like
a big one, man.
That's like getting like 5 strikes before you strike out. Like,
wait, so I'm sorry, I know you know, you're pulling this from Twitter, but wait, this was 1993. When did this come out?
This is the 90s, I think. Peter, let me look it up for you.
Yeah, just because it's fascinating to read now and be like, well, this is 100% wrong, especially having lived through 2 major like world historical economic crises and like being on the other side of one, right, or still in it right now. I think, you know, I mean, when you start to see a shift.
Oh, 1980. Okay.
Oh, so even, yeah. Well, honestly, though, but this is where you see a big shift in like, so like you have all this like fear and then this like, you know, chest beating that happens after the Soviet Union falls. And you have all these left wing philosophers trying to find some way to justify the years and years and years that they, you know, read Marx, because it felt like neoliberal capitalism was just dominant and was the only game in town. But you also had a lot more security and opportunity in academia itself. You could not get somebody to be able to write something like that today who considered themselves to be a leftist, just because even like the universities have become proletarianized, in the sense that like the vast majority of professors now, they're not tenured professors, right? They're adjunct professors who make $1,500 a class a semester, right? So like just in your like actual life, like you've seen conditions get worse. I mean, that's incredible.
I mean, I don't know, like the reserve, the pauper army, I don't think that could be demonstrated any clearer with the anxiety we have about unemployment insurance in this country, right? Like this, and the freak out we're having, like people think it's fucking great content to take a picture of some business owner saying, please be nice to the workers that are here because, you know, we won't pay enough to like get more workers around here. Like, I don't know. It's an amazing, like none of those are correct. Not a single one of those things that he thought was refuted by events turned out to be reality.
I think it's like an awesome mistake in a way, because it's like, it's like the upside down world, but he was spot on, but just upside down. Like, I think was actually correct. Like you could have predicted all of this, but you were saying it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
crazy.
And look, I think that he shouldn't have been the one who was tasked to do this. Just say
somebody else has been subsequently.
From everything I know about him, and it's been a little while since I've been in like the philosophy world, he seems a very good, person in general. So I don't want to like attack him too much. But my God, this is such a great example as to what leads. I mean, because this is 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens for the next few decades in left-wing politics, particularly in like the English-speaking world? Just wilderness, head in the sand. They had no idea what to do, right? The left becomes Bill Clinton for fuck's sake, after this, right? It's an incredible moment. And
I gotta say, I've read about communism. I read Peter Singer's A Very Short Introduction, and look, there's some things to take from it, but most of it's bullshit. So.
Yeah, I mean, and other than like Richard Wolff, or like God bless him for like sort of sticking it out in the library somewhere, when you basically be pushed out of like serious discourse. Thank God some people kept the flame alive during the dark days. But this is why I always tried to like, not in being like a theory guy or anything like that, saying, oh, you spend all your time like reading radical theory, but like, look, they took this from us. Right, that even the people who were supposed to be like the tribunes or the people fighting for these theories basically reject them. I mean, honestly, read that section right there and ask yourself if that person is a Marxist, right? Because those are like the core tenets of Marxism, right? So there's this serious break in the history of philosophy and like left-wing thought that like we're now reclaiming. And I think it is really important for us to reclaim. And I'm going to tell you where it's not going to come from is Harvard or Yale. Like it's not going to come from universities with grants and big donors who are going to try to do the work to reclaim this stuff. Next week for patrons, we're going to be talking with Megan Day about this kind of radical college in Arkansas that was around in the 20s and 30s that really found that it's like it is our duty to like uphold these traditions for working people, for them to use them to better their lives. And understand that anyways, like it was a very much a victory of the right wing to basically be able to smash Marxism, that even the so-called left at this time was just basically saying, yeah, all these things that are critical to our philosophy, I don't think we believe them anymore.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that I don't have any background around the guy and what was going on at it. I mean, like that time with in the left movement, but it's almost like he didn't believe in his own tenets. It's like that's the vibe I get out of it. You know what I mean? Or he didn't fully buy into it for some reason.
The arm's length.
And next month we're going to be doing a conversation on a book that's really important. I disagree with it. It's a bad book, but it's a book called Hegemony and Socialist Strategy, and it's like this genuine attempt from like that kind of worldview to like reclaim something from Marxism, but basically they erase everything that makes Marxism like a worthwhile theory in the first place, right? And it just becomes like, I mean, I don't want to bore everybody with it now because it's, there's a lot going on with it, but essentially they make this argument like we're going to get rid of class and we're just going to have like floating signifiers in politics, and then we'll construct a big group of people to win elections, right? Well, that just sounds like basic Democratic Party or any political party theory, right? It's like, oh, we'll get, this group of people to vote for us and this group of people to vote for us. And if we get enough of them, then we win, right? It's like, okay, well, what the hell? Why are we even dealing with Marxism at this point? You're just like anybody else trying to engage in politics. So a super dark time, man. And I'll just close by saying, whenever people like get really down at the state of the left today, remember it's a lot better than it was in the 1980s, man.
Honestly, even in 2007, my first major exposure to Marx, like where I was assigned him, frankly, was in a 19th century philosophy class in college. And I remember reading like German ideology and thinking like, this shit's fucking dope. But it was also being presented as if it was like dead, like it was Latin or something, like, right? Like, and I remember like that, and I don't really remember like being in class at Minnesota State University Moorhead very often, but that I remember just like feeling like could this, because like there's certain times in Marx where it's like, oh yeah, that it is, and it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Like that sort of feeling, and that tension between him saying it's gonna happen, and you kind of buy in the logic, and it being presented to you as this inert sort of like museum exhibit that I found fascinating, and I think I'm almost, I appreciate that I saw it being presented like that, because I don't think that's probably how Marx comes up these days in colleges. I'd be curious how he's couched by philosophy professors like that.
It's interesting too, because it makes me think that, when the mainstream culture, the mainstream accepted thought, or, with the economic system, with everything else, when you think outside of it, but you live in this place where everybody kind of like, everybody is generally accepted, it's kind of weird what it does. You know what I mean? Even though something can make sense, or something could be proven, like it's whatever he said wasn't going to happen is proven today. Like we see it, and over again. It's like, it's hard when you're swimming in that pool to like, to really articulate it, or to really believe that it's possible. And I think a lot of people have trouble with that, because a lot of people don't have enough imagination to think outside of whatever is the mainstream thought is. And I think it's a problem, because I see it in a lot of different spaces, not just economics and stuff like that.
No, and in fairness to folks in the 80s who like started to have questions, it's like, the end of the Communist Manifesto is poetry, right? Like Marx is like, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains, right? That's a claim that feels like it's, thundering like through history. And then you're sitting here in, 1980, and you might wonder, it's like, well, where are they? Like, you see why this happened, but one of the bigger problems was you had the left completely decouple itself from the class, right? Like you had the left pretty much, the left in the sense of like, Marxists, or people were thinking in this way, they're existing in universities for the most part, and then a few people who very bravely fought the fight and kept the torch alive and were part of important organizations. And I don't ever want to minimize people who were struggling in that period of time, but these weren't popular movements, right? So when you have the people who are sort of writing the history and the theory, and they're just people hanging out, talking to other people who reading guys like Shakespeare or stuff like that, ideas that might seem dead too, right? You could see how you could become disillusioned. But yeah, I mean, I think history has very much shown the opposite has been true, that these ideas are very much alive.
Yeah. Well, should we move maybe now to the mine workers from Warrior Met, if you want to introduce this coming up to Manhattan?
I mean, we've been talking about, these folks for a while, because this is a really critical strike. I mean, this has been 1,100 people since April 1st, I believe, on strike. This is people who don't have the abilities to, you don't have money in the bank. You're relying on the community. You're relying on support to maintain your standard of living, all while being faced with just brutal strike-breaking tactics. They've been showing up with scabs, been showing up and running through the picket line. There are allegations that these people, the scabs, have been polluting the waters in the community. I mean, really horrific stuff. Anyways, the fearlessness and the drive has not gone away. And these are the folks showing up in Manhattan earlier this week, protesting outside of the financial firm. So this is outside of State Street Global Advisors, who has a 11% stake in Warrior Met Coal. I also believe they were out front of BlackRock and a few other organizations, and just really bringing the fight to the people who profit off of their suffering and off of their exploitation in a way that I really love, because I think one of the advantages that financial capital has, like historically, even to the boss, is its ability to disappear into just numbers and paper, right?
Oh, totally.
Versus being somebody in your community who like, oh, this guy has a nice car, blah, blah. Like, this is some guy who lives in New Jersey, so he doesn't want to pay New York taxes, right?
Yeah.
Profiting like crazy off of, hurting people in Alabama. I think bringing the fight to them is critical, and the image is beautiful too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
make them uncomfortable, you know. And it's like, and they need that. They deserve to be made uncomfortable and to at least face. I'm sure some of them probably don't even care still. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Because it's like money over everything. But there's a few of them that are looking at that, and it sticks in their mind. And like you said, the imagery is powerful. And man, these people are courageous, man. To come up from Alabama to I don't know how they're staying in New York, because
Yeah,
even
that's true.
all over that area it's expensive.
Hmm.
They're taking a chance for, but for the greater good, and not only find for themselves, but the future workers and stuff. You know.
I love that too. Yeah, just like the broad view of it, and I also like. I have to say, I think that it's important to take these fights into the streets of Manhattan, because it's one of those things when you walk through that part of New York, you're walking through it, and I mean, it's super populated. It's obviously a different vibe than a lot of other places, but at a certain point, you're just like, oh, I'm in New York. I'm in like the big city, and you forget that's like all around you are just people who are just doing blood deals,
Just
right?
vampires, yeah.
And and life is just nice, right? They walk out, they get a hot dog from some guy whose country that they supported a coup against or whatnot, right? And bringing that fight to them, I think, is really critical.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the architecture of this sort of place, right? And that's something that just disgusted me since I've moved to New York. And you see like homeless people sleeping on the streets, and you have these massive, just vampiric citadels with these giant entryways that just like advertise, look at all this empty space we don't need to do fuck all with. We can buy some like extremely expensive art from some scam artist who like just sells to lobbies like ours, and right, like and it's just like it is like that thing you said, David, is so key about like whether it's capitalists or whether it's like the British Empire, like controlling shit from afar using like, let's put some telegrams in, let's do all this stuff, being able to like one, like travel back to their homes, and two, use this infrastructure now, which again, like we know this internet was created to spy on people, but to use it to point it at like these actual like these sorts of buildings, like they should be seen as just like the
citadels of entrenched capital and power.
Exactly.
Like they're like fortresses, man. I remember like my first dealings with New York, when me and my boys used to come up and we would try to like get into like major labels and stuff without knowing anything. And we realized they're like for real legit fortresses or radio stations. You cannot get into them. You got to go from the lobby. They're not going to let you upstairs. And I remember us trying to sneak into these things. And then, years later, I've gotten a few meetings and everything. And the waste that happens in these buildings, it's like these people have these elaborate coffee machines and they have all this food and snacks. When you're in there, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And people on the street are like hustling for like nothing and are hungry. That's the ugliness of capitalism, you know what I'm saying? And I don't think a lot of people get to see it. And for the people working on the other side, the winners, so to speak, they're insulated from the outside in the same way. So it's like sometimes they can't even realize they're in their own echo chamber, their own bubble, and it's easy to dissociate yourself from the reality of what you're doing or the effects of what you're doing.
Yeah, like the amount of free stuff, because I've been in like and you know someone in fashion, and like those sorts of like, it's first of all the shit that's just available for free up there. It's probably tax deducted anyway as a corporate expense. Like I remember going also into the NPR offices like early when I was first doing media and being amazed just that you could take books, like all these hardcovers that were just review copies, and like I can walk out of here with like $120 that I would have had to spend for these hardcover books, brand new, and you just get used to it. Like once you get to a certain point, you definitely like can like it's I forget what novel, Zadie Smith, I think, Swing Time, where it talks about just like you get into these industries and like you said, like it's disgusting the amount of just like free shit and like all this nice furniture that nobody ever sits in, and decoration, and it's and amazing fabrics and stuff. It's bizarre, and they are citadels, and it's
I just wanted to hit this just because, sometimes people come across these videos for the first time, very briefly, but like the story here is these miners you know, have you know, obviously been there for a very long time. But the company that owned the mine before was struggling extremely financially after the financial crisis. And there was worries that the mine was going to close. So the workers all decided that they would accept a pay cut to make sure that this mine had longevity, right? That company ended up going bankrupt, and then it got bought out by a lot of Yankee capital, by a lot of like New York City financial firms. You know, they all own different stakes in it. And the company, the mine became profitable to the tune of, I believe, millions of dollars. And now the workers are saying we want to get a fair and reasonable contract, like what we sacrificed to allow this place to continue. And all of y'all now are telling us that, you know, we don't deserve to reap in any of the benefit that we sacrificed. And like, drop that shit for a second. The coal that we take out of the ground that you sell and you make all the damn money from, that you don't think that we deserve, you know, to get our fair share of that, is absolutely despicable. And it just is such a clear example of why financial capital, like these are obviously moral questions, right? You know, you could say, oh, that's immoral, right? But these are systemic problems, right? You know, it's like, these are what happens when you have a financial firm in there, and the only thing that they see is numbers coming in and numbers coming out, right? They're going to do everything they can to make sure that the number coming out is as low as possible, right? And we have to start thinking systemically and talking about these things like that. And that's why I love this action so much too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they get a convenient amnesia when it comes back to rolling things back to what it used to be. They're like, well, we came in, you guys were working fine with this amount. Like, forget about the past history. This is what we're doing, moving on. It's like, it's
move
very
forward
convenient for them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Napoleon, anything you want to? You said you start up in a few months live shows. What do you want to plug for us? I did enjoy Bulls or 96 Bulls.
Oh yeah.
Was that come out last fall, right?
I think it did. I think it did. Yeah, man. I it was cool because I didn't play basketball in a while, and my man was like, "Yo, should shoot a video," and I could still dribble, so I still got it.
Oh yeah.
But no, like hopefully I'm gonna start having some shows in Europe. So people are starting talking to me about booking me like starting September. So I'm getting ready for that, trying to, you know, learn some new songs so I can have a updated set. I put out 3 EPs with a Kenaton from I Am who produced them, called The Hole in My Heart 1, 2, 3. All the vinyl is sold out, so that was great. I'm happy about that. Started rapping in French since, like, with the first time I came on TMBS, I wasn't doing it.
Yeah, I remember.
Since I talk about Comorian media like interviewed me and I spoke in French, and it gave me the idea to rap in French. So it's like a different lane I'm taking now too.
I noticed that on Spotify, your heaviest players are French, and yeah. I've done like Duolingo and Rosetta Stone French, and I'm gonna start listening to some of those to try to like get my vocabulary up to speed.
Right. Now it's been fun. I didn't really even know that I could do it, like rap like that, and I can. So it's fun. And like, so I got projects coming out, you know, in the summer. I'll probably have some more albums, a few more albums this year and next year. Of course, working on a lot of projects.
Well, Napoleon the Legend at Team NDL. Thank you so much, man. It was great catching up with you. Man,
always good to see you guys.
Really
Thanks
good.
for having me.
All right.
Thanks for staying up.
Word up.
Yeah, get some sleep.
So Berlin's an all-night town.
Right, you can probably go out and party right now. See you, Napoleon.
Peace.
All right, that was excellent.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was great seeing Napoleon, man.
Yeah, man. I go back and watch TMBS 105. Like he nails that history of Comoros extremely well. I mean, very. A lot of patterns you might expect, but also, the specifics there are very interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, David.
Yeah.
What should we wrap up on?
Well, let's just take a quick moment. We'll get to some fun stuff in a second. But we got more difficult news today, and I have a very hard time talking about this stuff because it is just so unacceptably evil. But in Canada, they have found another site of mass graves. I did not put it in the notes, but let me pull it up right now for us. They found another site of 751 unmarked graves. Oh, you have it right here, Matt. Thank you. This is in Indian country today. 751 unmarked graves is a wake-up call. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this name. Kawasessis First Nation in Saskatchewan says it discovered 751 unmarked graves at a site of the former Marieville Indian Residential School in a press conference Thursday. This discovery follows last month's report of 215 graves at another school. They are currently treating the area as a crime scene, as they absolutely should. These graves were found using ground-penetrating radar. And it's a horrific story. We talked last week with Lance from the Surfs about the horrific history in Canada, about these residential schools. Let's remind people, though, time and time again, these institutions are much more than just a cultural genocide. These are sites of torture, and rape and genocide and deliberate murder of people. And we have to, talk about it and acknowledge it, even though it's very difficult. In the United States right now, the Department of the Interior has also said that they're going to be conducting searches of residential schools or boarding schools here as well. And I'm sure this is unfortunately going to be not a lone result. I'm sure we're going to be finding much more about the devastating history. But these are things that we have to reckon with, and we have to, we can't just turn our heads away from it because it's difficult and uncomfortable, as horrible as it is, and how devastating it is to your human heart to think about these tragedies done to anyone, but notably children.
This is a moment, we're going to live through of confrontation with history in many ways, and I'm convinced that this is why you're seeing a freak out over things like CRT. It's basically like there's no this signal's going to get out there. These things are being investigated, and so you need to create a whole bunch of noise. And like you said, I don't know if you mentioned it, but we're going to investigate this here because we absolutely should. If you have any, people should look up documentaries about the American Indian movement. In the 70s, and a lot of figures that were central to that movement suffered abuse at boarding schools in the States. Just absolute psychological torture. Like we mentioned, the Pratt, I forget what the general, he coined the phrase "kill the Indian, save the man." So it was very explicit cultural genocide. Thoughts there on top of kidnapping and all sorts of things, right? This is a violent institution, and I think all you can do is be ready to confront it and put it into context. I mean, we're planning to do some more stuff on this,
for sure,
hopefully in the future.
And all right. I'm just going to take 2 seconds because there's no way to transition from that. Because we're going to talk in a second about Joe Biden and gun control. And we have some very, very fun footage, along with something that I think Matt has not seen before, because very much a kind of 2010 online political nerd thing. So I'm very excited for him to see this regarding Joe Biden. But I wanted to take a second and thank everybody so much for getting us here to Left Reckoning 25. It's been a really incredible journey. It's been so meaningful for Matt and I to get the support from the community to be able to tell these stories and to cover a lot of things that we felt weren't really being covered, or weren't being covered in the right way. And we're looking to continue that and to expand the crew, eventually expand the scope of all of this. And we couldn't do that without y'all. So please, if you have been enjoying the content so far, consider supporting us at patreon.com/Left Reckoning. We try to make it as affordable as possible. Our lowest tier is $5, but people ever need something, feel free to reach out. We can see what we can do. We also have solidarity tiers to help us make as much of this show as public as possible, because we want to make sure we're rewarding our patrons, but we also want to make sure that everybody who's interested in learning these lessons and histories and theories can get them as well. Next week, we're going to be taking a brief vacation, but there will still be content coming up. Don't you worry. On Monday, we'll be releasing a conversation we had with Megan Day of Jacobin Magazine about Commonwealth College in Arkansas, a really incredible history that also has a lot to say to us today as we build these new left-wing movements. A lot of similar veins as well. Next Thursday, we'll be releasing during our normal slot. For if you're a patron, you've already seen this, but for non-patrons, check it out, and maybe a good reason for you to join for the next few. We're going to be releasing a conversation with Milton Alamati on the radical legacy of Pan-Africanist and Marxist revolutionary Walter Rodney. Phenomenal conversation. We always learn so much by having Milton on the show.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I'm just excited because next month is going to be big. We have a lot of really exciting content coming up. We're going to be moving to Wednesdays at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. But we'll maintain Griscom streams on Tuesdays, normal relative time. But we're going to be joined by Victor Puggi to talk about Brazil. There's a new corruption case going on there, and hopefully charges against the clown fascist and ecocidal maniac Jair Bolsonaro.
Eco-fascist Jair Bolsonaro would be an interesting character, actually.
That would be an interesting synthesis, wouldn't it? I mean, honestly, the way that some of the critics of Lula talked about his imprisonment, it might fit a kind of like caricature, like, oh, they're putting Lula in prison right now so that somebody can come forward and really do something about protecting the Amazon. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing great conversations on Eugene Debs for patrons as well with Sean from Jacobin. And we will also be doing a deep dive into what we were talking about earlier, the really dangerous and damaging but influential work of the left populists, Chantal Mouffe and Ernesto Laclau, social hegemony and social strategy, with the folks from What's Left Philosophy Pod. It's going to be a really great conversation, plus much, much more. So look forward to that. Consider joining us on patreon.com/leftreckoning.
So, David, Joe Biden is talking tough.
Joe Biden's talking guns, y'all. And it's just... It's difficult to do politics sometimes when we're not on the stage. And what I mean by that, when like a kind of democratic socialist movement is not the opposition party to a far right Republican GOP death cult. It's frustrating because, one, you get these kind of watered down bills like we're seeing with infrastructure, but two, at moments where there's a lot of appetite for doing something radical and for changing things, you just see this sprint into the arms of culture war nonsense. And I'm sorry, what this plan from Joe Biden to deal with guns and the gun epidemic in this country right now is 100% that. And we're not even, Matt and I have talked about guns, and maybe we'll do a whole episode on like the philosophical questions around the Second Amendment, right? But at this point, what we're talking about is what Joe Biden is trying to do right now. And that is not solving this crisis once and for all.
No.
It's emboldening the United States police and law enforcement to start targeting and harassing people. What do I mean by that? Joe Biden's new gun control focus is a focus on cracking down on rogue gun dealers. And most notably, his focus has been encouraging cities and states to use the money from the COVID-19 relief bill to hire more police officers. So despite the fact that we just went through a whole year of defund the police movements along, on the left,
Kente cloths,
what we're getting, Kente cloths and all of that stuff, what we're getting from the Democratic Party is essentially an argument and encouraging cities and states across the country to use federal funds that were supposed to help us all as Americans get through this devastating COVID-19 pandemic that is not over, and the economic fallout is far from over from it, right? Instead of using that money to look out for schools to make sure that we have more programs that can help people get the damn vaccine, and all of these other things that need to be done in our communities across the country, instead of trying to encourage and strong arm cities and states to do more for people with this money that has been allocated, they're using it as a backdoor way to beef up police department budgets across the United States. And they're selling it to liberals by saying that we're finally going to do something about guns in this country. It's complete nonsense. And of course,
can we just say,
red
like,
meat for the Republicans?
the gun issue is just a Trojan horse for tough on crime liberals.
Yes.
Like that's all this is. Like any kind of rise in violent crime is, as far as I'm concerned, entirely explicable by conditions like a pandemic, right? Like these sorts of things. And also, we should point out, like Ted Cruz talking about Austin, Texas, defunding the police, and now crime's rising. Well, it's also rising in Dallas and Houston. Those places didn't didn't defund the police like Austin did. So like, we are in the midst of a genuine like panic. Media panic, we should say, about like the state of inner cities that Yang tried to run on himself. Like this is a pronounced thing that's happening here, and we should all know better, because this is like just classic. What happened with the war on crime, so called?
Yes.
Well, we all know what happened with it.
Well, I mean, long-term stuff, what we all know is that any serious crackdown on gun ownership is going to be a crackdown on poor and POC communities across the United States. I'll tell people who aren't familiar with rural America, particularly, rural America that's not white, aka most of the South, there's a significant amount of gun ownership across all groups of people in these communities. And you want to empower a bunch of Bubba sheriffs to start investigating people for having illegal firearms. That's on your conscience. It's not something that I'm going to sit around and support, right? I'm not saying that we can't have conversations about certain restrictions. I'm all for it. The gun industry in this country is insane. The NRA is an absolutely criminal organization, no doubt about it. But what you get from liberals and what we're already seeing right now for the Biden administration is not some kind of, we're going to have a sensible, we're going to deal with this thing sensibly. It's no, we're going to empower law enforcement to harass the groups of people that they already harass and target. And not only are we going to encourage them to do that, we're going to take funds that were allocated to help people through a pandemic, and we're going to try to get cities and states to use that to embolden an already extremely militarized and deadly police force across the country. Yeah. Come on, y'all. This is very simple what's going on.
Yeah, like the
not to mention the politics of it.
Right. Well, that's exactly like because there's no actual real, you're not going to do anything significant to stop any mass shootings or gun death problem in this country by just going after these illegal like sales. You need to take on the actual industry. It's the reason America has so much gun deaths is because America has so many guns, and those aren't sold illegally. Like we sell those like motherfuckers here. So like you're going to need to do something, and the only way to do this is first of all to shut up about it on the campaign trail. I would say like just shut the fuck up about it. And then when you get enough power to actually vote this stuff through, or God forbid there's another fucking tragedy like Las Vegas or Newtown, then you go and say like this whole class of weapons, no, not going to do that anymore. You just to pass that, but it's not a political issue at all. Like, and it's a wrecker political issue in my opinion. Like it's Bloomberg used as a wedge against the Democratic Party, honestly, like itself. It's a
moneymaker. I'm sorry, it's a moneymaker on both sides. It's a huge moneymaker. It excites a base. It doesn't expand the coalition. Right?
And that's why like Biden's rhetoric is so like annoying to me, because it's like he's all he's doing is like validating people's narcissism on this issue, which is like, the president's making the point that I've made against, my Bubba cousin. And it's like, well, okay, like fine. Like, okay, maybe some of these guys are a bit unrealistic about what they could do with a firearm, but like, I don't know. Like, I'll just say this. Biden makes me want to own a firearm for deterrence when he talks like this.
Well, we should play these clips, and we're going to play 2 clips here. Matt hasn't seen the second one, because look, that's our serious take on the on the gun stuff, and I'd love to do more conversations about it because it is complicated, and like really sussing out a solution to it, I think, is difficult. But I think that people should recognize that the way that this is used as a political football is extremely damaging to anyone who actually has any real intentions about trying to do something about gun deaths and gun murders in this country, right? Yeah. But also, more importantly, anybody who's serious about implementing any kind of significant radical bottom-up change in this country either, because there is just nothing that works so well to get Americans riled up than a story of that they're going to come for your guns, right? And it's really annoying, especially in southern states and like sort of ex-rural states that are going through these transitions, because it plays to a certain group of people, primarily upper middle class, transplants, and it excites traditional communities, people who have lived, right? Like when they do the gun stuff here in Texas, right, they're talking to Dallas suburbs and to Austinites in general, I would say, right? But like, you know what I mean? And like, and then it destroys the kind of political communities that we're trying to build up too, and it destroys it for no reason. Because what I'm saying is, like, if there was actually some kind of effective policy that was being put forward that was going to mitigate harm and death and despair, right, it might be a worthy trade-off. But what I'm saying is, like, this is just playing to endless donor war. And in this worst example is just being used to embolden the damn police force, which is not something that we should be supporting. Yeah,
and the utopianism of like, well, we could do what Australia did. No, we can't. Like, we can't expand Medicare. They're not gonna like fucking like do an Australian gun roundup model. It's just, like, we're literally closer to like honestly, like reparations. I literally think I honestly think that we are closer to reparations than we are to gun forced buybacks. It's just not happening. And like I said, like, you need to take on the industry with legislation in order to do this. It's like stopping, like, criminalizing this sort of stuff is just, like you said, it's just fodder for cops. Exactly. But I got this. Or go ahead. You want to say one more thing?
I was gonna say, we have this Biden thing, and I was just to set it up. I love this clip, one, because it's really wacky, and it's Biden going back to like some of his campaign dynamics where he was just mumbling about something and nobody understood what he was talking about, which he's been on a roll about on this week, I must say, with just kind of incoherent speeches and sentence fragments. But what I like about this even more is this is the damn president of the United States essentially flexing on the American public, saying, if you come for me, we're going to kick you, like, we're going to beat your ass because I got the military behind me. And I like it because this is like the most like banal, like liberal dad or like, character, whoever you want to envision, argument against guns for the conception of like, democracy. And I don't know. I love that, like, the president of the United States is invoking the same kind of like tired arguments about it, but also in this very sloppy way.
Yeah. There's no sense of place. It's like almost Trump-like.
The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun.
Can we just say, like, most common limitation to the Second Amendment you'll find in the first 100 years of America are like, don't sell to that Native American tribe because they'll point them back at us, or slaves. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely no, like, even or freed black men. Absolutely no. Don't do guns to them. So I don't know if this is not the august tradition of the Second Amendment.
The type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of the blood of patriots,
I don't know. That's actually
I'm not an expert, but I was curious.
Like, maybe it is true. Like, cannons require, though, like, infrastructure. Like, those are. I bet you if you were rich enough, you could buy a cannon, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So too, man.
And all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you wanted to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned.
See, that's all you need to fucking say. You don't need to do this thing where you're like, get an F-15 and then I'll maybe take you seriously, but like...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a bad way to frame it politically, obviously, if I was to say, but Biden honestly is very similar to Trump in the sense that, you know, his handlers sometimes struggle to control him because that's not the best message to be putting forward. And I don't know, I think it's very funny for the president of the United States to talk to us as if, like, you know, we're equals in that sense. Right. And when he's talking about the U.S. like, you know, like as if he's sympathetic to that argument. Right. But he's like, oh, but the military, which I don't control.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like too powerful for y'all to feel it. But like, this is very like, you know, this is a silly way to frame it from Biden. And I just wanted to bring up, if you have it prepared, or you can get to this Basil Marceau.
Basil Marceau, yeah, got it.
I just want to put them next to each other because effectively these, even though they're on different sides of the issue, this is the exact same future that these people are presenting, which is a continuation and a constant fight over gun ownership in the United States as a way to this is so good, by the way, to score cheap political points. And just so I could put this forward, this is from the Republican primary in 2010 in Tennessee. And Basil Marceau is an internet meme if you're not familiar with him. But this is very much like, you know, scraping the barrel when it came to campaign funding, great 2010 video editing stuff. And anyways, Joe Biden and Basil Marceau have a lot in common on this issue.
Hello, citizens. This is BasilMarceau.com. I'm your Republican candidate for governor of Tennessee. I want you to put me in this building, the Capitol behind me here, so I can do my issues and make you all more freer than you were yesterday.
Ooh.
When I become your governor, I'm gonna move the capital to Chattanooga, Tennessee, at the State Building where Don Sundquist held
just the worst audio.
his temporary office, so I can clean house and get rid of all the backroom politics that ruin our politics program in Tennessee.
Okay.
I'll probably take a year or two. So,
Very much like the Joe Biden plan, right? You got to kick it down the road a
clean
little
house.
Oh, here it comes.
If you vote for me,
On the march.
I won't take any campaign contributions. I'd rather lose than take campaign contributions. So you know I won't be bought and sold. And your rights will be protected for eternity, even if I have to write in blood. And I want you to vote for me. And I'll see you all at the polls. I would also plant vegetation.
I do like this.
On all vacant lots
Okay.
that they take from us when we build roads and plant and turn it into ethanol.
Well, okay.
Cash it in for gas or money. Then
Cash
I
in
also
for
stop
cash.
traffic stops. Make judges listen to the oath.
Listen to this.
Make the flag fly right. Remove the gold fringe flag
Oh, I love that bit.
from
too.
our society.
Can you explain that to me?
The
gold-
flags.
The gold fringe flag? What's
So this is one of my favorite things. And honestly, this is our 25th episode, so we can indulge. I actually realized I sent the wrong clip on guns, which I'm sending the other one to you. But while we do that, the gold thing is so funny, Matt. Are you not familiar with that? It's not a big thing in the Dakotas. So basically, the idea is that since, you know, if you go into a lot of courthouses, they have like the fancier flags that have the fringes around them,
yeah.
right? That's not the official United States flag.
I love giving a
It's
fuck
as
about
stupid
this.
as you think, but it gets even better, right? So it's not just like, oh, that's not the official one, so we don't like it, but somehow the flag, because I love how conservatives say about the Constitution and lawmaking in general, that it's some kind of like magical like experience. That basically, because they've been flying the wrong flags in courtrooms across America, that like the vast majority of Supreme Court decisions and court decisions that have been made like don't count. And for whatever reason, it's a really big thing in Tennessee. I'm sure it might be elsewhere, but I know for a fact that it's very big in Tennessee because it's something that keeps on coming up with the GOP there.
That is the dumbest. To care about that, you've been misled horribly for a long time. Here's the one.
It's the same thing with like the sovereign citizen guys. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got the wrong video, but that Basil Marceau thing is a treat, you know.
I do like the
Hello,
Yankee Doodle.
citizen. I'm not a cop. Don't let me scare you.
Well, what's the fucking badge? I was wondering about that.
Okay, but I'm sorry, that's badass though. I'm not a cop. Don't let me scare you. Running for the GOP in Tennessee.
Why is he wearing a badge? Oh, okay.
Marcel.com, your Republican
Or he
governor for Tennessee. I'm here today next to this T-86L aircraft. I picked this location because I like it a lot.
Okay, fair enough.
Hope it stays here forever. I'm here to talk about gun control.
I'm here to talk about, like, script your shit out, bro.
Many people died for gun control in the military to make sure our Constitution stays full and alive and not
the
be
great
a dead
gun
letter,
uprising
as
of
it's quoted
1897.
Congressional Globe, 39th Congress, 38, 41, and 42. So I have to look back at our forefathers, how they wrote the Constitution. They knew we had murderers on the streets. They know we had nutcakes, but they didn't put no sub-paragraphs in there concerning them. So who am I to say I'm gonna write an amendment to the Constitution and say nutcakes can't have guns, criminals can't have guns?
I'm just trying to imagine, like, the idea that, like, a gun trader in 1813, like, the local nutcase would come into his establishment and be like, give me a gun. And he'd be like, oh shit, this fucking Second Amendment means I have to give you this gun. Like, that's not how it works, Basil.
No, you're so right.
So I have to go look at the Constitution myself. And it says there that we have a right to bear arms against our government. At the moment, that'd be very difficult. The government have Patriot missiles. We have slingshots with stones. And they want to put numbers on the stones to find out where it came from. Well, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to have to recall all licenses, all permits, and allow everyone in the state to have a gun. And if you don't have one, maybe I'll even fine you $10 for not having one, because I want you all in a group of 25 or more to come to Nashville with your guns and tell me I'm doing wrong. And then we'll sit down at the table and discuss it, and 10 to 1, being that we, the people, are in charge, and I'm only borrowing the seat temporarily for 8 years. So I'm gonna have to let them rule. So
you know what?
I'm BasilMarcel.com.
Yeah.
I want you to say the Pledge of Allegiance every time you go down to the voting place.
BasilMarceau.com is more thoughtful than any Republican in office today, I think.
Honestly, that was it. I mean, it's a little bit, walk down memory lane. 11 years ago, like I spent a lot of time watching Basil Marceau videos. His debates are pretty funny too.
Oh damn, he debated people.
Oh yeah, because he really ran for. I mean,
what percentage? What was his highest? Oh, okay. I was gonna say he's pulling like 28%.
I can't imagine. But anyways, I messed up by giving us the wrong video up at the top. But it's essentially two sides of the same damn coin on the gun thing, right? This just bumbling argument about the conception of whether or not like a bunch of armed resistors could just take on the U.S. military.
Yeah.
which is, it's just like, it's the way that they get each other riled up on both sides, right?
Yeah.
The Democrats get riled up because they get worried, because honestly, like, a lot of gun culture in America is extremely right-wing, extremely fascist, and undoubtedly white nationalist.
Oh yeah.
Right? There is like we have a gun culture in this country because it's a settler colonial nation, and you wanted to have the people who are on the front lines of colonialism armed to the teeth, right? There's no doubt about the history of that. We're in all complete agreement on it, but I am also saying that it's very clear about who is going to be targeted by any kind of gun measures in the United States. And it's not going to be the characters that I think a lot of liberals think are going to be targeted. It's going to be a lot of normal working class American POC communities being targeted by the state. And I just think that people should be a little bit careful, especially when it comes to things like what we're seeing from Biden, when it's very clear what this is being used for, to beef up a campaign message that they think the Republicans in 2022 are going to run ads that say the Democratic Party wants to defund the police. Aren't you against criminals? And then you're going to have Joe Biden, listen here, Jack, we gave $300 million to cities across the country to beef up their police departments. What are you talking about? This is a cynical ploy for them to put more money in the pockets of police departments, which are much more of a threat to American people than gun ownership in general, I would say.
Yeah, so Left Reckoning approves of the Red Basil Alliance.
I don't know if we've vetted him enough to know if we should be making
I don't know.
that joke.
I watched him on 2 videos. I think I'm cool with it. We'll have some fun stuff to go through in the post game, folks. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to join us there. Anything else you want to say in this part of the program?
No, just thanks everybody so much for getting us to 25. Very humbled, and feeling a lot of love and looking forward to the next bit. Seriously consider joining us in the post game too. We take questions from the Discord. We have a really lively community there, so definitely consider joining up. I hope to see you on the other side.
Absolutely. All right, folks. See you patrons in about, I'd say, 25 minutes.